Hello, my friends. My name is Gerdes. I'm just a professor trying to provide context in the war in Ukraine, and here are three big stories you should be aware of today. So, what you're looking at is an Army tactical missile system that's called ATACMS, and what it looks like when it's being fired. This is from Wikipedia. Now, what's just happened recently is we're almost to the point where the Biden White House will allow Ukraine to use Western weapons like ATACMS in Russia. We're not there yet. It hasn't been official. In fact, less than an hour ago, the New York Times put out this article. Should Ukraine launch Western weapons deep into Russia? Just ignore and just go on and do it anyway. Zelensky said that at a meeting with the heads of U.S. Secretary Blinken and British David Lammy, the British counterpart, diplomacy, he presented them with a very direct and detailed vision of what lifting restrictions on long-range strikes against Russia is necessary for Ukraine. Delaying this process results in Russia moving military targets deeper into Russian territory, the president said. Okay, so they didn't give the green light, but they were hearing from Zelensky of what he would do with it and how he would process it, and I'm sure they're going to be reporting back. Meanwhile, London will allow Kyiv to fire Storm Shadow missiles deep into Russian Federation, The Guardian quoted sources in the British government as saying. Now, I haven't heard the British government actually say it, but The Guardian is quoting somebody who is saying that they're going to allow that. The publication writes that the British authorities have already made a decision, but will not announce it publicly. According to the sources, if a positive decision on Storm Shadow has not been made, U.S. Secretary of State Blinken and British Foreign Minister Lammy would not have come to Kyiv to meet with the Ukrainian president. I think that's probably a fair assessment, but again, no official pronouncements have been made. The U.S. Department of Defense, however, signed a $1 billion contract with the Raytheon Company to produce sophisticated air-to-air AMRAAM medium-range missiles, which, among others, will be delivered to Ukraine, well, who knows, 2025, 2026? We're not exactly sure, and they don't give a date, and that's not reassuring. Okay, the White House is finalizing work on a plan to ease restrictions on Ukraine's use of U.S.-provided weapons to strike into Russian territory, but who knows what'll come of it, when it'll come, that sort of thing. The bottom line is this: we want Ukraine to win, Blinken says in Kyiv. I'm so glad to hear that. They're not saying we want Russia to lose. They're saying we want Ukraine to win. Not we want to stand by as long as it takes, but we want Ukraine to win. Gary Kasparov's reply was only this White House could remain committed to something they committed to for the first time this morning. But yet again, better late than never for saying Ukrainian victory, as we've been asking for 2 years. Now to do what's necessary to achieve it. Again, the reason he said that is because this line of we want Ukraine to win is pretty new. You haven't heard it articulated like that. More assumed than articulated before now. Okay, well, that's where we are. What would it look like if they had Ukrainian, or if Ukraine had ATACMS? It could look like this. If they had the largest range ones, Moscow is here, and this is the kind of range that Ukraine would actually have. It's pretty amazing. It would be quite an imposition on the Russian way of doing business. Okay, this just in, Dmitry Peskov, Russia will respond to Ukraine's permission to launch strike with Western weapons deep into Russian territory. According to the Kremlin spokesperson, such a decision significantly increases the degree of involvement of the countries of the collective West in the conflict. Okay, but well, what are you going to do with it? And then Lavrov said Moscow has no doubt that the decision to lift restrictions on the use of long-range missiles to attack Russian territory was made long ago. Well, perhaps it was, and we just don't know. Meanwhile, Zelensky is rejecting the China-Brazil peace plan as destructive. Okay, so Ukrainian president, this is in Euromaidan Press, Ukrainian president labeled a China-Brazil peace plan as politically destructive, emphasizing that it was not discussed with Ukraine. He criticized the lack of respect for Ukrainian territorial integrity and rejected calls for negotiations with Russian President Putin. Earlier on August 2nd, China's special envoy claimed that the new China-Brazil peace plan was allegedly well received by 110 countries. I talked about that. On 29 August, Ukraine's ambassador to Brazil stated that Brazil had not informed Ukraine of its intention to present the peace plan alongside China. Meanwhile, Ukraine's peace formula is based on international law and includes Russia's withdrawal from Ukraine and returning all POWs and civilian captives. China acts as a Russian ally, though it has so far refrained from openly supplying Moscow with weapons. And we'll talk more about that in just a moment. Zelensky expressed disappointment with Brazilian President Lula da Silva's stance. He further criticized the notion of compromise with Russia, questioning what compromise? Giving up our land? Forgetting that they're killing our people? It's a good question. I mean, how exactly do you compromise with that? Say, like, if we said compromise with giving up part of your body, which do you want to give up? The hand, a foot, a knee? What do you want to do? Ukrainian president also pointed out that the peace initiative lacked any meaningful consideration for Ukraine's perspective. You spoke to Russia, proposed an initiative, and now suggest it to us? That's not justice or respect, he said. So that's pretty much a non-starter, this so-called peace plan. Okay, Zelensky and President Xi of China may meet in October. That'll be an interesting meeting. Recently, the president of Ukraine criticized China and Brazil's peace plan, calling it destructive and coordinated with the Kremlin. Okay, switching gears just a little bit, we're still dealing with China. US and EU reiterate transatlantic concern over Chinese support for Russia's war against Ukraine. Well, what are we talking about? Western powers expressed alarm at China's continued export of dual-use goods to Russia. So it's computer parts, they may be used in this, but they could be used in military parts, and they're still sending it, viewing these actions as a direct challenge to global security and the rules-based international order. In this way, China effectively contributes to Russia's ability to conduct and prolong its war against Ukraine. Now, I think that's a very fair statement here that they're prolonging the war against Ukraine. And you only hear that usually from the other side. Oh, if the US gives arms to Ukraine, it's only prolonging the inevitable. Okay. Here, a U.S. official, this is the Kyiv Post, a U.S. official alleges Beijing's and Moscow are deepening their military and technological ties. And what's going on here? The U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Kurt Campbell told journalists on Tuesday, Beijing is aiding Russia's military production in exchange for advanced technology, which goes beyond exporting dual-use components as previously reported. These are not dual-use capabilities. They are basically being applied directly to the Russian war machine. These are component pieces of a very substantial effort on the part of China to help sustain, build, and diversify various elements of the Russian war machine. So what Russia is getting from China is helping their war machine, but what can China get from Russia? Well, technology that they don't have, like Beijing could benefit from Moscow's expertise in submarines or maybe some missile technology, that sort of thing. So, yeah, it's a thing. Okay. Russia manages also to get French spare parts from Thales and Safran to service its Su-30 in Kazakhstan. So the Kazakhstanis are brokering this. It's looking like it's going to a military contractor for Kazakhstan, but it's really getting pushed back into Russia. So that's what's going on there. And here's the actual article. Russia secretly services its warplanes with French-made equipment. Russia reported it has up to 130 units of modernized Su-30SM fighter jets in service as of 2024. Russians have lost at least 15 of these aircraft in the war of aggression, and it might have been one more that we just reported on this morning. Okay, Latvia, this is just more interesting than anything else. In Latvia, they're initiating the removal of the Russian language from the interface of ATMs of commercial banks at the beginning of 2025. The Baltic states, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, they hate Russia because Russia in the form of the Soviet Union came in and dominated them for 50 years, and they broke away and they don't want any part of this, and they are firmly behind Ukraine as a consequence. By the way, when Russia talks about how Russia was here first and Ukraine's just this hinterlands of Russia, this coin was minted in Kyiv in 1019. At that time, Muscovy didn't exist. Okay, we'll leave you with this. This is from TASS. Recent deliberations about alleged deliveries of weapons to Russia from abroad are groundless, Dmitry Peskov said. Okay, he's Putin's spokesperson. Darth Putin, do not believe anything until the Kremlin denies it. They put a TM here. Trademark. All right, my friends, thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes and the shares and the subscribes. Be looking forward to our live stream either this Saturday or next Saturday. Members and patrons will be able to see this. And thank you very much for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.